Hello and welcome. Week 2 of the NFL just finished last night, and it was just as wild as it was last week. There were some big monumentous comebacks this week, and then along with that, there was also some very surprising scores when it came to a few games. So, I'm not going to waste too much time. Let's just get into it. Thursday night saw the Chiefs take on the Chargers, and the Chiefs won 27-24, but the Chiefs won 27-24, and it was a really good game. I mean, Justin Herbert took some shots, and he has some rib issues. I think it's like rib cartilage something, so he's like basically day to day. And it's kind of funny, the doctor that's treating him was the same one that punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung. And now that he's basically, Tyrod Taylor's suing him for $5 million, so it's just kind of funny how that works, so they still have the same doctor working on ribs. When it came to the game, though, I mean, it was just like it was another good game. Those AFC West games always seem to be really, really good. Herbert threw for like 300 and some yards, had a really good day, and then Mahomes threw for 200 some, so, and he had a really good day as well. It's just, when it came down to it, it basically came down to one play. There was a play where Everett just basically went, I forget how many yards it was, but he had a huge play, and he was really tired. He's trying to tap out, and they were going tempo, so they wouldn't let him get out. So they basically had him run another route. The route goes to him, and then the seventh, I want to say he was seventh, he's either a seventh round pick or he's undrafted. I can't remember which, but whoever was the corner for Kansas City picked it off, took it like, I think it was 99 yards or 97 yards as a record for either an undrafted rookie or a seventh round rookie, whichever one it was. But it was basically, Everett was tired, he needed out, and they didn't sub him out. And then basically because of that, he didn't run his route with all the energy that he could have had. And then it's pick six to the house. The game was basically over after that. Herbert got a garbage touchdown to make it look a little bit closer. But overall, it was a really awesome game. You really couldn't tell who was going to win. I mean, it was just overall, it was a really good game, and it was just fun to watch. For one of the other, so that was the Thursday night game. For one of the Sunday night games, it was the Steelers ended up losing to the Patriots 17-14. It was just kind of like a weird game. The Patriots offense has been weird, was really weird week 1, and no one really knew what they were going to do, and then all of a sudden they were running and gashing a Steelers team that usually does not allow that much on the ground. So it's kind of surprising to see how successful they were. And then I believe it's Jacoby Myers, Moss, one of the DBs for the Steelers. And then other than that, basically the game was not too fun to watch. Mitch looks not that good right now, and there's even chance for Kenny Pickett to come in. So it's going to be interesting to see how long Mitch keeps that job if they keep playing like this. I mean, they had a really good win last week, but it was a huge letdown this week. And without T.J. Watt, I mean, this team looked kind of bad. It was kind of crazy how just missing T.J. Watt. I guess he's a big energy guy and he's a huge piece of that locker room, but I mean, wow, this team just looked. The Steelers looked kind of bad last week, and they're going to be interesting to see what they do for coming into next week. As for the Patriots, I mean, Mac Jones didn't play the best, but they still ended up with a win. So this is still going to be a weird year to watch the Patriots, see what they do, because overall this just felt like a really weird game. Another game was Panthers against the Giants, which basically became a field goal fest, it seemed like. Not much really happened in this game. It was kind of like slow moving. Both offenses were kind of meh. The Giants got 2 huge fumbles, though. I believe one of them was on a kickoff, if I can remember right. And then another one, they forced one of the receivers to fumble. And basically, I mean, those 2 huge stops are basically what won them the game. Because, I mean, they only won by 3. But regardless, Giants are now 2-0, and that's really, really good for them because basically Brian Daboll has all this energy now, and he just seems to be. The Giants just seem, even though they started out last year 3-0 against bad competition, even with how they played last year, it just seems like this year there's so much more energy with that team, and it's gonna be fun to see how they keep it going because the Giants take on the Cowboys next week on Monday night, and I think if I'm not wrong, they're potentially favored, so. This is going to be a real fun game for the Giants because they can win this game, then they might be. I know that Cooper Rush is still the backup for the Cowboys, and he's still starting regardless. But if the Giants can win this game, that's a huge step forward into them for them winning the division. Another wild game was the Browns and Jets. This is one of the 3 big main games of the week that was just like, whoa, what the hell just happened? So Kareem Hunt had a chance to basically go down inbounds, choose some more time. He ended up getting tackled out of bounds. And that's whatever. And then there's another play. Nick Chubb probably, I mean, it's football though, so I get it. But Nick Chubb probably should have gone down at the 1. If he does, time runs out and they win the game. But regardless, they still score a touchdown. They would have been up 2 scores with 2 minutes left. So, I mean, it still looked good. Basically, I mean, he scores the touchdown. They miss the extra point, and they're up 13 with 2 minutes left. And then somehow, blown coverage, the Jets get wide open for a touchdown. And then with the new rules change, they're the first team to get the onside kick. And if you watch the onside kick, it was just a complete miss by Amari Cooper, and then all of a sudden it's like, no way the Browns are going to lose this, right? And then they slowly just kind of go down the field a little bit. Not much time left, and then you're just sitting there. It's like, no way they're actually going to do this, right? And then just as basically time is expiring, Joe Flacco, I forget who it was, but he hit somebody over the middle, and they basically scored the touchdown with like almost no time left, and the Jets end up winning 31-30. I know it's the Jets, and they can still have a bad season, but this was a monumentous win for them because of momentum. Because, I mean, now that they can prove that they can come back and I know it's still the Browns, and hindsight, I don't know how the Browns blow that game, but I mean, it's still good for the Jets because now they know they can come back in games. And basically, yeah, it was an amazing comeback watching the game. I thought the Browns were going to win, and I had them pick in my pick'em league, so that kind of sucked to watch them blow that game. But it's good for Jets fans because, I mean, hey, it shows your team can maybe kind of do it. Now it's just going to be interesting to see because they still have a really, really tough next few weeks of the season. But if they can find a way to maybe win a game or two here and there, do some good for the momentum the Jets will have in the coming seasons. I'm just going to get this one out of the way. The Jaguars beat the Colts 24-0. I mean, I don't know what the demons are the Colts have in Jacksonville. And now Jacksonville is leading the division. And the AFC South might be the NFC East of the last few years. It's just that game was awful. Jonathan Taylor has like 7 touches in 3 quarters. I don't know what the coaching staff is doing. It's starting to get really loud around Colts social media, too, about firing Frank Reich, potentially. So it's going to be interesting to watch the coaching situation for the Colts as the games go on. They have a tough matchup against the Chiefs next week, so they're potentially going to start the season out 0-2-1. And, I mean, that just was an ugly game for the Colts. They didn't look like they had any confidence. They couldn't get anything going. And when it comes to the Jags look good. I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence was 9 for 10 at one point. He was just dotting them up. They were methodically moving down the field, eating up a lot of time, and it was just a great win by Jacksonville, and I'm sure that's good for them too, because now they're 1-1, leading the division, and this team can potentially have some confidence after the way they played the last 2 weeks. In a weird game, it was the Buccaneers and the Saints. That game was like 3-0 for the longest time, then it was 3-3, and then basically the big scrum happened, and it seemed like they kind of set Brady off, and it did just enough for the Bucs to win. Well, I forget what the play was exactly, but Marcus Lattimore said something to Brady, and then Brady got back in his face, and then Leonard Fournette pushes Lattimore pushes Fournette, and then Lattimore got blasted by Mike Evans again. And then with all their history, now Mike Evans is suspended a game. He's trying to appeal it, but we'll see what happens. But regardless, I mean, basically that's what the jolt that the Bucs needed, because they would go on to win 20-10. The defense rallied as well. They made some huge plays off Jameis, and another huge play when I believe it was Olave. I believe it was Olave. He was just running. Basically, he started stumbling, and then he fumbled the ball on the ground. When it came to the Saints, they played really, really well for a lot of the game, and then basically after that whole fight, it was just like it felt like the Bucs basically just swung the momentum out of it, and you could just see, and the guys responded and everything. It was still a good game. A good game as in competitive, but it was just like ugly. Tom Brady was screaming the whole game at his line and everyone. It's just that Bucs team. I mean, even though they finally got the regular season win against the Saints, it was just that felt like a weird game. And with like Julio Jones out for potentially a bit now, and all these injuries, it's just this Bucs team is just starting to become a really weird like cloud of mist. And another wild game, the Dolphins beat the Ravens, and what in the hell just happened in that game? So the Ravens, I believe, were up 28-7 or 24-7.5, 35-14, with I want to say end of third maybe. I can't remember exactly, but they were up 35-14 basically towards the end of the game, and I don't know where deep bomb to Tyreek Hill, another deep bomb to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle makes some plays here and there, and all of a sudden, fantasy-wise, Tyreek Hill had like 40, Jalen Waddle had 40, and then I want to say Tua had like 50. So monster days by all of them. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are the first teammates ever in the NFL history to have over 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns each in the same game. And I mean, the Dolphins just looked amazing in that comeback. I think the biggest takeaway from this game is it's going to be hard to stay out of games for the Dolphins, and vice versa. It's going to be hard to keep the Dolphins put away if they can do this. Because, I mean, the Ravens were up big, and basically, like, the game was over, and then all of a sudden, boom, deep bomb, boom, deep bomb. And all of a sudden, the Ravens went down to kick a field goal to go up 3, and then the Dolphins scored to win the game. I mean, It was an amazing game. It was probably one of the best games of the week. Lamar Jackson looked amazing on the ground. That was supposed to be the Lamar Jackson game. He had like over 100 rushing. He had like, I want to say over like 250 plus passing, but I can't remember exactly. But Lamar Jackson was just looking amazing that game. There was one fumble they had on the fourth down that early on in the game that potentially might look like it will do something because the Dolphins were down and scored, but then the Ravens scored right back. So, I mean, it wasn't fully for sure. But then, yeah, just somehow the Dolphins found a way to come back, and now Mike McDaniel has beat Bill Belichick and John Harbaugh. And, I mean, the Dolphins might be a real threat. They play the Bills next week, so that's going to be a really interesting game to watch because the Bills have just been rolling teams. So if the Dolphins can find a way to stay competitive, then they might be the real deal. Another good game for the first time in 24 games. The Lions were favored against the Commanders, and they came out dominating to begin with. I mean, the Lions went up huge early. I want to say they were up like 14 or 20. I remember 15. I want to say it was 22-0. Yeah, I believe it was like 22-0. The game final score ended up being 36-27, but I mean, it was just really good game for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a really good game, and for Lions, it's just awesome to see them. Like, they were favored, they won. And it almost seems like the Hard Knocks is carrying over a little bit. It feels like the tone's changing a little bit in that building. So I mean, it was just like a really, really good one. Carson Wentz looked ugly for Commanders in the beginning. I mean, he scored some late garbage touchdowns, but I mean, that first half was disgusting by him. And you could tell because it was 22-0, and the Lions were winning. So when it comes to the next coming weeks, it's going to be fun to watch these Lions because now that they won a game and they were really competitive in another game against the Eagles, who looked really good, by the way. I'll get to that game in a minute, but the Eagles looked really, really good, and the Lions hung around and were able to make a little bit of a comeback against them, and then now they won this week. It's just going to be interesting to see what this team does. And when it comes to the Commanders, I mean, it's hard to tell what they are yet. I mean, they came back against the Jaguars, and then they lose to the Lions. So, still too early to see what they are yet, but I don't know what much they're going to do. For one of the 4 o'clock games now, we have the Rams and Falcons. The Rams basically blew them out early, and then all of a sudden it was like 28-3, and then all of a sudden the Falcons almost make a comeback, and then I think Jalen Ramsey makes the final play to win it. I was kind of busy in the afternoon, so I couldn't really watch all these afternoon games, so I only got bits and pieces. Basically, the Rams were up big. I don't know what happened in that game, but it basically came down to the last minute for the Falcons, and they almost won. So I don't know if that's more of the Rams blowing in and laying off the gas, or if the Falcons finally wanting to do some stuff. But regardless, I mean, Rams won, which is good for them going into next week against the Cardinals, who had an interesting game. And when it comes to the Falcons, the fact they came back a little bit, that might be good for momentum. But I still don't know what they are yet. So that's going to be it's still hard to figure out who they are, at least. When it comes to, because basically I would say maybe as of right now there's 5 teams that I could say with confidence are probably going to be 11-win teams and are going to probably go really far in the playoffs. Other than that, there's a lot of toss-up in different tiers. But so, I mean, I don't know where to put the Falcons yet. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but they could be in the upper tier of non-playoff teams if they, based on what they showed this game, the fact they could come back against the Super Bowl champ or the reigning Super Bowl champs. But yeah, still too early to see, so we're going to have to wait. The 49ers and Seahawks, that game, I'm basically going to repeat what a lot of the media has been saying, but they aren't wrong about it. As awful, I know you never want to see anybody get hurt, and it's just truly, truly awful to see. I mean, I had Trey Lance on the fantasy team, and I was excited to see if he was actually a dude or not, to see how he did, and he ended up breaking his ankle, which is really awful, and he's done for the season, which is something you never want to see. It's completely awful for the kid. I mean, hopefully he's young enough to where he can recover back, fully healthy or not, but it's going to be awful for him missing time. But now for the 49ers, as awful it is that he's gone, it's probably better for their probably better for their present now, because this team is kind of ready to go. And with Trey Lance there is kind of potential. He could be really, really, really good, or he could have been subpar and they missed the playoffs. But now with Jimmy G, they kind of know what they get with him, and he ended up coming in, and they win 27-7 against the Seahawks. So, and it felt like when he came in, a lot of people were saying, I ended up not seeing this game, but a lot of people were saying when he came in, almost felt like the team kind of got up and felt like, okay, we can do this now for sure. And so basically because of that, yeah, it's good for the 49ers that they kept Jimmy G now, and they look smart because they got him at a cheaper price, and now he's going to end up starting for them probably the whole season. But when it comes to Trey Lance, it's just awful to hear for him. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery. But yeah, now this 49ers team went from maybe like a question mark to now potential at least like playoff team, I would think. When it comes to the Broncos beat the Texans 16-9. This is another one of those games where I wasn't able to really watch much of it, but the way it sounds, the Broncos struggled for majority of the game. I mean, I saw at one point they were down 9-6, but and there's a lot of rumors out right now that Russell Wilson's not the same Russell Wilson he has been for years past. And just based on the game last week and looking at these scores, yeah, I would also a lot of it I think has to come with like coach Nate Hackett. There's a lot of people that are saying like he kind of doesn't know what he's doing fully, and not like he doesn't know what he's doing as coaching, but he's almost like a deer in the headlights sometimes where like a situation will happen and he's like he hasn't thought ahead too much, so he's kind of like acting in the moment, and it's just like it's whatever it is. It's like and then but Judy went out that game too, so there's so much going on. So it's hard to tell like fully what's going on with that Broncos team. They still need a little bit more time to gel, but the way they're looking right now, they potentially won't make the playoffs the way these other AFC West teams are scoring. Like the Raiders are being able to score almost at ease sometimes. The Chargers and Chiefs for sure seem like they can score at ease when they can get it rolling. So the Broncos are going to have to pick it up if they're going to be able to do anything in the playoffs. And when it comes to the Texans, I mean, another week where they played really, really impressive, but just ended up not getting the win. They play the Bears next week, and they're underdogs, and that's going to be an interesting game because I feel like they potentially should be favored. Because I don't think the Bears have impressed many people either too much, but it's whatever. I mean, that regardless, it's just 16-9 is kind of an ugly game, and both those teams are kind of looking for their offense right now. For one of the second to last afternoon game for Sunday, the Cardinals beat the Raiders 29-23, and what a wild game. The Raiders were up, I think, 20-0 at one point. Kyler has the longest fourth down conversion ever, where he's just running around basically. And then he scores another touchdown, I think, on 4th and goal, and then he gets another 2-point conversion, and they go to overtime. And during overtime, they don't do anything, and then the Raiders finally get the ball. Apparently, Derek Carr is off the field for a long, long, long time. And then he finally gets on the field. They kind of are looking shaky. Renfro fumbles on a play, but he was already down, so then that was scary. And then next play, Renfro ends up fumbling again after a big hit, and the Cardinals take it to the house to win. This was one of those games where the script completely flipped on the narrative on what was going to be the outcome of the game, because originally that probably was going to be like, oh, is Cliff Kingsbury the guy? Is he going to have to be gone? Potentially. Those started to now. The Raiders blow the game, and the Cardinals make a miracle comeback, and they might have some momentum. It's crazy the way football works, but, I mean, that was a great comeback by the Cardinals. I mean, they played really, really well. I don't know if the Raiders let off the gas or what, but they played really well. They ended up putting themselves in a position where they were able to come back, and they completed the comeback, which is awesome by them. Next week, the Cardinals play the Rams, so that's probably going to be a huge revenge game. And with some momentum coming off of this game, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And for the last afternoon game, it was the Cowboys and Bengals. Cooper Rush made the start, and they were up, I think, 17-3 against the Bengals early. Bengals come in to roar back, but then Cooper Rush makes a game-winning drive to set up for a 50-yard field goal that barely snuck it in. It was interesting to see. I mean, Cooper Rush is now 2-0 as a Cowboys starter, and the Bengals are what? I don't know what they are. They can't protect Joe Burrow. He's getting hit and sacked basically feels like every play. He's already been sacked, I think, 12 times this year, so I mean, the Bengals is just going to have to. The Bengals are starting to enter some dangerous territory because I think teams that are 0-2 have like an 11% chance to make the playoffs, basically, and I forget how many. It's a long year of that stat, but it's starting to look really scary for the Bengals if they can't keep Joe Burrow protected and if they just can't find ways to get going early, because they make all these good comebacks late, but that does nothing when you're down so much that it almost doesn't matter. For the Sunday night game, it was Packers beat the Bears 27-10. There was a Justin Fields touchdown that was potentially called back, but, I mean, it's the same old, basically. Aaron Rodgers owns Chicago, and Justin Fields barely threw. I think he threw, like, under 11 times, so they're going to need to figure out that offense because you can't win NFL games with a quarterback throwing 8-9 times, even when you're down, like, almost 20. It was a really good game on the ground for Aaron Jones. He had like over 100 rushing. A.J. Dillon had a really good game as well. Alan Lazard made his comeback. And the Packers just seemed to roll like they usually do when they play the Bears. So, good one for them. They're going to take this moving on to the next week. And for the next week, the Bears play the Texans. So, and they're favorites, so it's going to be interesting to see. That's, I feel like, a must-win game for them. Or because they find a way to lose that, I think Bears fans and everywhere are going to start feeling a little more scared about their team. When it came to Monday night, it was basically two blowouts. One was way worse than the other. Bills beat Titans 41-7. Titans offense looks like they couldn't do anything, and the Bills just look like juggernauts. Stephon Diggs, I think, had more receiving yards than all the receivers on the Titans combined, and he had 3 touchdowns and just absolutely torched them. Derrick Henry couldn't get anything going on the ground. Josh Allen looks like he's an assassin out there. I mean, the Bills are definitely going to be a problem because, I mean, they had a pick six even, too, late in the game. Then we got to see a little bit of Malik Willis while everything was going on. Just, yeah, ugly game for the Titans. And they muffed, I think, 2 punts. They ended up securing one after the muff. But when it comes to the Titans, I mean, they are looking a little bit scary, too, because that's 2 weeks now where Derrick Henry hasn't been able to get going, and that's not a good sign for them. The other Monday night game, the Eagles win 24-7 against the Vikings, and Kirk Cousins was doing a lot of throwing to Darius Slay in the green yesterday. I mean, the Eagles scored early, and then Jalen Hurts hit him with a bomb to put it up 14-0, and that was basically like the end of the game after that. They ended up scoring 1 touchdown, but Kirk played really, really bad. He was throwing behind receivers all night, throwing into defenders. They ended up blitzing a lot, too, and getting there. It was just a really, really bad game for the Vikings. The Eagles look really good now, too, because they scored 38 last week, scored 24 this week, and potentially now it's looking like they might be the winners of the division. I know the Cowboys might give them a run for their money, potentially, but that's going to be a thing to watch about because legit, I mean, with the backup in, this is the Eagles' time to get going, so potentially this is their division to win. And when it comes to the Vikings, I mean, that was just an ugly game. They're just going to have to watch that and forget it. That was basically the NFL for the week. I mean, there's 3 wild monumentous comebacks. Sadly, we lose Trey Lance for the year, which is really sad. You never want to see that. All in all, week 3 is going to look like it's a bunch of wild matchups. I mean, I looked ahead and there's just some game, like for example, like how the Texans aren't favored against the Bears, or the Chiefs are only 7-point favorites against the Colts. Like, it's going to be a lot of interesting, weird games next week. So I'm sure week 3 will be just exciting as it was for week 1. Now, when it comes to college for week 3, there's some interesting games as well. I mean, there was Michigan State looked god-awful against Washington, so they got upset. Appalachian State had a miracle Hail Mary comeback that you have to watch to see for yourself. That's just unbelievable. And then I'll just go over some of the top 25. Michigan blew out UConn. Kentucky blew out Youngstown State. Baylor blew out Texas State. Oklahoma blew out Nebraska. And, I mean, just Nebraska on defense just looks like they just don't have the defense this year. Penn State blew out Auburn. Auburn's looking really, really bad this year. Oregon was blowing out BYU early, but then BYU made it a little closer. They only lost by 21, but still, Oregon looked really, really good. Ole Miss blew out Georgia Tech. They looked really good. Alabama blew out Louisiana Monroe. They looked like Alabama. One of the top 19, one of the top 25 that's going to look scary is the 19 Wake Forest. They lost to Liberty. They beat Liberty, but they only won by 1, and they almost blew that game, so that's going to be potentially interesting to see where they end up dropping. Tennessee blew out Akron. North Carolina State beat Texas Tech. So Arkansas, while down early, ends up coming back to win. Oklahoma State blew out Arkansas Pine. Ohio State, while early looked like they might be in a semi-close game, they end up blowing out Toledo. Pitt beats Western Michigan. Florida had a scary one, but they win by 3 against South Florida. Like I said, Michigan State lost to Washington bad. Clemson beat Louisiana Tech by a lot. Texas had a scare for a bit, but they ended up winning. A&M upsets Miami, and Miami just looks like they have no offense, basically. Utah beat San Diego State pretty bad, and then USC, to finish out the top 25, ended up beating Fresno State 45-17. Now, it's going to be interesting to see who comes into the ranking this week, so I think that most of them have already been released, but it's going to be fun to see just like what upsets basically are coming next week, because as we're going on, we're getting closer and closer to where there's a lot more conference games, and basically it's where the college is the most fun, because these first few weeks they basically play a bunch of warm up schools and all that to get going. So looking ahead to week 4, I'll just peek at some matchups for the top 25. Oh yeah, Georgia also. By the way, I forgot to mention last week. Georgia just looks dominant. They're going to be an issue for anyone. They just absolutely demolished South Carolina. When it comes to next week, Arkansas is going to Texas A&M. That's one of the few ranked teams against ranked team next week. And then other than that, it's basically looking to a lot of 14 to 20 point spreads. So a good game potentially is going to be Oregon-Washington State. Oregon goes to Washington State, so that's going to be fun. Texas goes to Texas Tech. That's going to be another interesting one. And then, now Wake Forest, like I said, they dropped to 21 after their 19. So they didn't drop as bad as I thought they would. They play Clemson, and Clemson's a 7-point favorite, so that's going to be a game to watch out for because the way both those teams are playing, that's going to be interesting. And one game I missed, Florida-Tennessee. That's probably going to be one of the games of the day because there's very few ranked matchups this week, and that's probably one of the closest ranked matchups. So it's going to be fun going into next week, seeing what happens. So going into next week, it's going to be another fun week in the NFL. There's going to be some weird matchups, and then when it comes to college, there's a few games that basically are probably going to be blowouts potentially, but knowing college football, anything can really happen.